we have to acknowledge that capitalism operating on a racial hierarchy has never worked for Black people, for people of color, for other communities that have been marginalized.
It has not worked for white people.
And it has not worked for white people as well. Good day, everyone. My name is Dr. Williams, CEO and co-founder of Kindred Futures, formerly known as Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative. Welcome to Black Wealth Unlocked. Today's episode is focused on our origin to our evolution, and I'm so excited to be joined by co-founder, partner in crime, partner in leadership, Tene Traylor. Welcome again, Tene, to Black Wealth Unlocked.
I'm so happy to be here with you and everyone. I love it.
Yes, we're so excited to have you.
What's going on?
Well, let's start with you because from our last episode, we were really sharing so much about our excitement on the upcoming Beloved Economy report. And now we have an exciting new rebranding campaign, and I can't believe the journey. So I'd love for us to just take a moment to talk about what these past couple of years have meant for this organization on this journey to Kindred Futures.
Well, what has this journey meant? So many things, so many things.
A labor of love.
Absolutely. Labor of love. Labor of sisterhood, tough decisions, laughs, new faces, old faces. And look, I don't want to take away, like, our early start was rooted in a pandemic, rooted in a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
But I definitely think that, and we needed it. Yeah, we needed to understand how an organization needed to evolve. And we needed to ask ourselves some tough questions about what the future holds. And I think we are living proof collectively of what happens when a leader steps up at the right time, at the right moment, with the right vision and with the right level of support, where we can go in such a short period of time. And the Beloved Economies report was just such a hallmark moment for us. Because it wasn't just a report. It wasn't just us saying, like, here's data, here's information. It was a reflection of who and what we are, who and what we stood for, and the boldness of what we were trying to say. We put forth 13, 18 recommendations. We defined the structural determinants of wealth in a way that is transformational. And we have set forth, we've put something in motion with the team that has just been, I think, just has made the board proud, has made us as co-founders proud, and particularly that staff. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
It is. It is. You know, I always say Kindred is a child. It really is.
It is.
And
It's our baby.
It's our baby. And it's definitely been a labor of love. And to even think about the name Kindred Futures, to me, embodies so much of the origin story, but also the hope. You know, just had a conversation with a sister, and she kept saying kindred spirits. And I didn't correct her because it actually is grounded in kindred spirits and community. And I love that this work has always been birthed out of love for Black people, Black communities, a deep commitment to freedom and what that looks like. And I love the emphasis on futures as well, because it draws on Dr. King's, mutual network, inescapable network of mutuality that we have with each other. You know, we just released this report in the summer, Standing on Business, and the report shows like Black businesses actually help improve child well-being outcomes. And so when we talk about like building Black wealth, it is not just a justice imperative, it is an economic imperative as well. Everyone does better off. So I love how Kindred captures the spirit of community, collectivism in this broader effort. And I think that's really important as we reimagine, like, what does Black wealth look like, as we're thinking about it as a movement to really fuel our freedom.
No, I mean, of course, I agree with that. I also think, this whole notion of kindred, it's the collective, it's the family, it's the connectedness, it's the togetherness of what that means. It's the tension in that.
Right? Yep.
And it's the tension of being, it's the tension of progress, and it's the tension of history that binds us. And I think the point of futures is to say that there's, even though you have this tension, there's an opportunity ahead of us that's purposeful.
Yeah.
And I think we see that. I think it challenges us.
Mm-hmm.
It challenges us.
Yeah.
To live that.
Yeah.
Which is very hard to do as a nonprofit organization. Yeah. Fundamentally, it's hard to live your values when everyone else seems to think that they may know what's best for you.
Yeah.
So to hold it, the level of intentionality it's going to take to live up to Kindred Futures, it's tough. And it's not going to just take, it's going to take the network of Black wealth solution providers.
That's right. That's right.
It's going to take our funders.
Yes.
It's going to take you. It's going to take me. It's going to take the board. But I just say that because, I don't want us to lose the fact that, it's hard. It's hard to stay explicit, but not, what you're saying, explicit, but
not exclusive.
Not exclusive.
Not exclusive.
And I think that that's what Kindred Futures is about.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a good tune because we've always said we want to be race explicit.
That's right.
And race explicit does not mean race exclusive. And I think the campaign that will accompany or rebrand is a very important one. And when we think about futures includes the dynamism of the Black communities, which is not a monolith, as well. There's space for other people as well. We have a shared future. I'm really interested in us delving into the tension some more. And you and I have been part of a lot of interesting, engaging conversations, sometimes debates with others around what do we tell to success?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've been so unapologetic about is to transcend Black exceptionalism. And so as we think about success, it is so easy to be seduced by the outliers. And the outliers are really important. But we need to emphasize, how do we move the mean? How does the sum of us, how are we better off? And it reminds me, I think, this tension about the role of love and accountability. And I can't tell you how much I've been just, rereading a lot of Baldwin's work, and his quote around the role of the lover is similar to the role of the artist.
That's right.
And he talks about how lovers, artists challenge you to see the corners of yourself that you won't see. And so many times when we're having conversations, even at the cookout,
that's right,
about the corners of ourselves we cannot see, it's greeted with tension because we have to navigate, if we are to be free, the relationship between accountability and love. So I'd love for you to talk about our campaign that will be accompanying Kindred Futures rebrand, and why it was so important for us to tilt conventional wisdom on its head to transcend Black exceptionalism.
So Janelle, you mentioned this campaign and this tension between who we are and who we want to be. And this is not a new tension. You mentioned Baldwin. You and I had the opportunity to really, we had the privilege to sit in, big sky country and really think and think about big ideas. We hadn't done that since 2016, let's be clear. And in that conversation, we were unpacking this conversation around Black exceptionalism. And in that, we were like, where did this come from? What is that, what is that moment where you think we could really like pinpoint this in a conversation for us? And we started to bring up the scholars.
Yes.
And we noted the conversation around the talented 10 by W.E.B. Du Bois. And he, of course, he had the opportunity to question his own thinking around that. But it is a moment for us that we held on to. And it was up for debate in 1903 when he first came on the scene and started to talk about this. And we started to say, like, well, what did that lead to? This conversation around the talented 10. How did that begin to really, in some ways, imprint in our mind that only a few of us were really prepared to take on the whole of us? Yeah. And we really grappled with that in that conversation. And what we realized was that the talented 10th wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And even though, again, like I said, we've invited other scholars in to help us with this conversation. But what we realized, and this has led to the campaign, that how do we move from the talented 10 to really thinking about the collective?
That's right.
And how do we begin to focus on the talented 90th? The talented 90th, all of us, the collective of us, really understanding that we have a commitment to all of us to be in community with each other, to build wealth with each other, to have a stable economy with each other in a way that's not limited. It's a way that allows us to grow and build together.
That's right.
We need all of us. We don't just need one Atlanta. We need Atlanta to be or one Prince George's County or Montgomery County. We need the whole United States to be a space where Black people can walk into a community and see who and what they are and what they need to thrive.
That's
and
right.
We have economies built for that. So this campaign is a movement on how we begin to open up something that we were built on, which is this conversation around building community wealth.
Yes.
And not just individual wealth. And so I'm really excited about where we're going with it. I'm really excited about launching it. I'm really excited about talking about it, debating with people about it.
Yeah.
It's a start. It's the conversation we need to have right now.
Yeah. Talented 90 just is I'm so excited about it because it offers an opportunity for us to reframe our results as well and the way that we think about success in this work. And when people ask me like, well, Black wealth, you're bringing this interdisciplinary approach. What does it mean? And I'm like, our North Star is to address the 2 million Black households in the American South that has zero or negative net worth.
First of all,
2 million.
We've always been interdisciplinary. We've always had to marry health, finances, and navigating the environmental conditions in our homes.
Yes,
and
civic protections.
Civic protections. We have all had to do that. That is not. We don't get to separate those.
We don't.
So this notion, what we're doing is bringing a light and bringing a way to understand how these things come together, so they're not a barrier, but they're an opportunity for us to break through.
That's right.
Love this.
That's right. That's right. We're in an interesting moment in this country that will be cited in several history books. And we are in a time where we're poised to make very intentional decisions around what the future of democracy means. And as we think about striking ideological differences around what it means to be an American, as we think about the legal assault on race-conscious work,
That's right.
It takes such courage and strategy to stand 10 toes deep to say we are unapologetically focused on building Black wealth. What's the opportunity for this movement, for the ecosystem of partners to navigate this work in a dynamic way that it's not just like a righteous campaign, but it's rooted in results?
Cool. I would ask you that question. Janelle, we're in a moment.
We are.
But when you think about the work that you're doing, I'm not deflecting. I'm going to answer the question. Let me be clear. But seriously, when you think about the work that Kindred Futures is embarking on in a moment where, let me just be clear, this isn't just a litigious moment.
No.
This is a social fabric moment.
Oh, yeah.
We are framed at the end, not even what do you call it, the edges of it. Like, right, it is for all the ways that we're coming together, it's almost like we're also trying to figure out how to pull it together and thread it back together.
Yeah.
So where do you see, where, if someone asked you, like, what is the role of a like an economic, somebody may say an economic focused organization on democracy? Why are those things connected? Why are we putting those things together? You don't necessarily see the NASDAQ talking about, you know, voting rights or civic power and participation. Like, why do you feel like Kindred Futures that's our responsibility?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely our responsibility, and it's not exclusively our responsibility. And this is where doing this work in community is critically important. One, I think at a macro level, we have to not just interrogate, but truly embrace that ending structural racism is both a moral, just, and economic imperative. I think that is just essential. And if we want to protect America as a democracy, eliminating structural racism is critical for us to have a vibrant economy. For all. And so we need an economy that works for all if we are going to protect our democracy at an international level. I think we have to name that. And this is where the race explicit is not race exclusive is a critical piece to embrace, because this is necessary. The second thing, I think the how absolutely matters. And we have to acknowledge that capitalism operating on a racial hierarchy has never worked for Black people, for people of color, for other communities that have been marginalized.
It has not worked for white people.
And it has not worked for white people as well. Let us be clear when we delve into the detail. So capitalism operating on a racial hierarchy is not sustainable. Right. And so this is not about cutting and pasting old models that excluded people and pushed people to the economic fringes and trying to just cut and paste it into work and call it, okay, this is racial justice work. Right. It's not. We have to sit at the intersection of racial and economic justice work and think about, like you said, the sum of us. What does it mean for the community? So I would love to see much more policy, public and private investments in shared ownership models and what it means to actually facilitate and support thriving communities that are communities of choice. And then the last thing I'll say is the how matters. You know, this is not about an ideological debate. I think sometimes we fall in love with our ideas and we miss the impact. And so it's so critical for us to remember results over righteousness. And that means we do the work with integrity, but we're not so in love with our ideas that if they're not working, we refuse to abort them.
Yeah.
We have to be biased to impact. We have to be biased to results. And I think that promotes shared accountability. And shared accountability is critical if we want to move this needle to promote Black wealth, to build collective Black wealth, which actually is an invitation for love.
You know, perfect. I will say that I know I've spent my entire career. I know you spent a deep portion of your career in nonprofit sector and philanthropy. And oftentimes we get caught up in, and we talk about this, that we're going to program our way out of this.
Yes.
Like if we just do 5 more fill in the blanks.
That's right.
We open up 5 more fill in the blanks, 10 more fill in the blanks. Then we're gonna see impact. We're gonna see results. Right. We're gonna see people's lives shift. And I feel like we know that we can make some level of incremental progress in individual lives through some of the programming that we've invested in. Yeah. And I'm not talking about relief. Yeah. I'm not talking about when people need to eat and we need to give them food. That's right. Not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying when we build out full programs with an artificial understanding of the result.
Yes.
So, and the reason why that's important is to say that we've got to tackle an understanding of the structural and policy implications of where we are.
Yeah.
And that's across the board. I would also, like the economic component, I'd also say we've also got to look at the environmental component.
Yeah.
Because what's happening right now with this conversation around decarbonization and the way we're trying to enter people's homes around making sure people have access to electrification and reducing our gas emissions and really understanding that component is really going to be important for Black and Brown communities as well, because we are the beneficiaries of negative environmental impact as well.
That's right.
So I'm saying this to say that we've just got to figure out collectively, again, how to move our mental models around programming our way out of structural changes.
That's right.
These things, they have not worked. And even if we have seen programs be effective, they're not necessarily impactful.
That's right.
Effectiveness and being impactful, I want to say, can be two different things, particularly when you have a results-oriented shift when it comes to full community shifts.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we've gotten away from that. And
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm talking a little bit like in circles right now, but I just think we need to really think through how our programs are tying into structural change.
Well, I think that's really important. And I think this is where there's a real opportunity for civic organizations, private entities, public entities that are invested in this shared mission. And particularly when I think about the Deep South, you and I have this conversation all the time. Like when we think about federal resources and capital deployment, we see an uneven distribution. And the response is always like, well, there isn't capacity.
Yeah.
And so that is not a sufficient answer.
Nope.
The response is, well, how do we bolster the resiliency, the capacity of mission-aligned entities to do this work, right? And I think that's such an important emphasis we need to think about, because it's so much easier to invest in institutional building. And what we really need to do is start talking about ecosystem building. No one entity could solve these issues independently. And I think it's about really bolstering a coordinated ecosystem, relentlessly working on a shared results agenda if we want to see sustainable impact.
And let me be clear. I think when we talk about capacity, that means different things to different people.
Yeah.
Often it's I'm going back to the word mental model of what people think leadership should look like around capacity.
Yeah.
And it's I don't want to define it, but we know that it has a very linear way of appearing.
Yes.
It has a very
Eurocentric flavor.
Yeah. It has a very.
I said what I said. It does.
It's definitely an approach that I think that does not consider the nuance and the dynamics of leadership that is dealing with a host of things.
Yes.
That cannot be solved in the 9-to-5 workday. It cannot be solved in a staff meeting.
Yes.
Okay. And that's meeting, not meeting. Meeting. I do think that we've got to really think through when people walk into spaces, particularly Black and Brown led spaces, and they see nuance in the leadership and say that the dynamics of having Black and Brown leaders doing Black and Brown work does not equate to lack of capacity.
That's right. That's right.
Particularly in regions like the American South.
Yeah.
These things are not synonymous with lack of capacity.
Yeah.
But oftentimes when we think about maybe you have a leader that has a little twang in their voice, right? Or you think about a leader who wears their hair in a certain way. Or you think about a leader that has either a certain generation in the workforce that just requires something different.
Yeah.
And then we begin to say how we begin to move in that space and how you begin to build community in that space and the decisions you need to make in that space are just different than, say, our traditional organization. So I just want to unpack this notion of doing, to be honest, to do Black work, you have to kind of move differently.
Oh, yeah, because it's soul work, right?
Soul work.
And when we think about, what it means to do soul work, there's also another mental unsaid rubric around the problem you're solving for.
Yeah.
And what are the unspoken expectations if you're trying to address these issues by either looking at the supply side or the demand side.
Right.
I see this in housing all the time, right? This is not just about, okay, let's supply more affordable widgets. It's around, no, let's talk about the lack of economic mobility. Let's talk about the demand piece, which is upstream, wedded to structural factors that have created inequities and inaccessible access to inaccessible housing, right, that people could afford. And so I just think it's incredibly nuanced, and this work demands courage to sit in the nuance.
And can I just say this as you think about this? The people and the problems oftentimes are together. So we solving for our own challenges and the work that we do. So I also want to hold that in nuance as well.
Yeah.
We don't get to visit our problem.
No, we don't.
We are in the problems. We are in the solutions. And sometimes I think that is lost when certain folks get to visit the work on a day-to-day basis. And then and that's something that some of us don't have the luxury of doing. Yeah. So I just wanted to lift that up. And talk about soul work. Yeah. Part of that soul work is the proximity to the work. And it's not just and it's the familiarity that's right. Work. So you're thinking about the solutions not as a visitor, but as a resident. And oftentimes I think that just takes a certain level of care. Yeah. And heartbreak that we don't account for. Yeah. So I just wanted to lift that up.
Well, it is both self-awareness and situational awareness too, right? Because I could spend so much time really unpacking all the things that have me at this moment. Right. And some of those things are drivers and some of those things are traumatic experiences, right? But it's about seeing how we are inextricably linked around our present and inevitably our future is so critical. And that's where the community building is such an essential component for soul work to be real. Because who's going to check you? Thank you for joining us for part 1 of today's Black Wealth Unlocked episode from Origin to Evolution for Kindred Futures. And I want to thank Tene Traylor, fellow co-founder for Kindred Futures, for joining us. We know the best is still yet to come, so I strongly encourage you to tune in for part 2, where we will be delving in more into the organization's origin and what's next on the horizon for Kindred Futures. Thank you.